Now, as that 1 year mark for the Tinubu administration dawns this week, one conclusion is that while everyone is busy focusing on assessing governance at the federal level, they're ignoring the states, where the real work of sustaining economic development, social services, and wealth creation ought to be greatest. In fact, a whole slew of analysts have concluded that in most states, the rates of growth and development have fallen well below acceptable levels, whilst the magnitude of poverty has expanded. They say this has huge implications that are even more consequential than what is happening at the federal level. Dr. Dakuku Peterside reckons it's an impunity crisis, and in his latest article in This Day newspaper, he wonders what has happened to the promises the governors made on Inauguration Day. Well, to expand on that, I'm joined now in the studio by the author, columnist, and former member of the House of Representatives, Dr. Dakuku Peterside. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening.
And when you wonder what happened to the promises the governors made on Inauguration Day, the presumption has to be that you don't believe that they've come close to fulfilling those pledges.
That's very correct. I was privileged to listen to the speeches of at least 10 governors, and in many other cases, read the speeches they delivered on Inauguration Day. And indeed, it was full of promises, raised hope. We were quite optimistic. We had a lot of expectations that things will change. Now, the immediate past governors, most of the immediate past governors, there's nothing to be excited about their performance, or nothing to cheer about their performance. Save for very few states, most of them performed suboptimally. And so when on the 29th of May, I read inauguration speeches, listened to inauguration speeches, there was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of expectations. But 1 year down the line, I am sure, not just I, most stakeholders, most citizens are not as excited as they were on the 29th of May last year. And there are many reasons for it. There are many reasons for it. If you look at the critical indicators, is it in the area of poverty? And there's this argument that states are not responsible for why we have high rate of poverty. Now, there's a study done by both the World Bank and many other development intervention agencies that has shown that poverty has progressed exponentially. At some point, it was like 40% of the population were rated to be under extreme poverty. Now it is 46%. That's one indicator. Now, again, inflation rate is all-time high. Now, food inflation is above 40%. Month-to-month inflation is above 33%. Aside from that, if you look at other critical indicators, especially social services, where states have primary responsibility, whether it's in education, it's in healthcare, whether it's in infrastructure provision, transportation, provision of creation of opportunities, rather, there's nothing to cheer about.
So that's interesting. So basically, you're explaining to us why the states are such a consequential dynamic in the assessments that are taking place of the 1 year in office of leaders in Nigeria. In other words, we really ought to be focusing on the states.
That's okay, and it's justified. Now, if you look at the physicals of the country, the revenue allocation of the country, the federal government gets the chunk, 52%. Now, cumulatively, the states and local governments get in the neighborhood of 47%. The states get about 26%, 26 points. Then the local governments get 20% plus. Now, but in reality,
but a lot of that money doesn't really go to the local governments.
Absolutely. In reality, that the way we're structured, local government is technically speaking an appendage of the states.
Yes.
So we can rightly say that the states get about 47% of the revenue. Now, if we're holding government to account for 52, the central government to account for 52% of the revenue, why shouldn't hold states to account for, even if it's the 26% or the 47%? And by the way our constitution is structured, the states have primary responsibility for a number of things. Education is on the concurrent list, but primary education is basically the responsibility of local governments. Now, there's a constitutional amendment right now that empowers states to generate electricity, transmit, distribute electricity. How many states are taking advantage of that? You can mention Enugu that has created the ecosystem for investors to participate in electricity generation, and perhaps Ekiti. Those are just 2 out of the 36 states.
Abia.
Well, Abia, I don't think they have the framework. The geometric power is an isolated case of an initiative that predated the current
that's a good
administration.
point.
You must acknowledge that. Not that they've created the ecosystem. Now, in terms of transportation, they've still not done anything novel.
But to be fair to Abia State, and I'm not putting up a defense for them, I mean, a lot of the money that went to geometric power over that long period of time came from
over the 8 years period
from Diamond Bank, which the current governor now was
that's
was
a different dynamic.
at
That's
the
why
time.
we're not talking about that.
I see what you mean. Yeah, but why do you think these state governors are failing? I mean, are they just incompetent, lacking in sophistication, spectacularly corrupt? Or are they just consciously punishing their people?
It's a cocktail of factors. And I can point out a few. Now, a number of governors clearly lack vision. Now, one responsibility of leadership is direction. You cast the vision, you show the people the way to go, and you put in place a program of action, a strategic plan to achieve those overarching objectives. Now, many states in Nigeria, what can you associate them with in the past 1 year? Akwamam seems to be doing very well in intervention in education. Enugu maybe is doing very well because they've set up an electricity ecosystem. They have the smart school initiative. Epon seems to be doing well even in the area of healthcare. They're intervening here and there, but not many states. Not many states. Niger and maybe Jigawa and Nasarawa seems to be doing well in agriculture. Nasarawa is taking advantage of the mining resources they have.
Although Niger has a lot of security problems.
Niger is facing
and that gets in the way.
But you must acknowledge the fact that the government is making a lot of effort in the area of agriculture. But now we're talking about 36 states. Kano, yes, Kano may have done well in allocation of budgetary allocation to education. Now, they've also done good budgetary allocation to healthcare. But we want to see it translate, not just from budgetary allocation, translate to concrete reality.
Absolutely. I think what I found most alarming but true about your article is that some states have simply not been able to demonstrate any meaningful achievements in any area.
Majority of the states, not just.
And perhaps more worrying, do not appear to be able to achieve anything or have a plan to achieve anything going forward, unless, as you pointed out, something drastic happens. What might that drastic thing be in your assessments that will help kickstart them into productive action?
Now, it's never really too late to change course. If a state governor realizes that all along he's been motion without movement, and he clearly defines his vision, articulates a plan to realize the vision, and settle down to work, assemble a good team. And that's the challenge I observe with most state governors. They don't have a good team. And so I don't see a clear vision. One of the things I did was going through the website of many states, looking at their budget. I will shock you. Not more than 10 states have their budget uploaded on their website. Now that speaks to transparency and accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't intend to be accountable for resources entrusted to their care. It's not their resources. Let me use Governor Eno of Akwa Ibom. One of the conversations he had with me, he said, this is Akwa Ibom State, not Eno Umo State. And I said, that's good. That you come to that realization that these resources are not your own resources. They are resources belonging to the people. Now, what of internally generated revenue? What are they doing? Are we still looking up to the Federation Allocation Committee joint account just to go run to Abuja every month? What are we putting in place to generate internal revenue to sustain our states? And we've always said that many states are not fiscally viable. I've heard stories that Enugu moved from 30 billion monthly annual internal generated revenue to 280 billion. If that is true, good progress. But you see, we must strike a balance between, social services and taxation. We shouldn't overtax the people, not when we are literally in an economic crisis.
Right.
Inflation is all-time high. There's a high level of poverty. That translates to hunger. And we're not providing, the critical infrastructure to drive economic growth.
And does that include your state, Rivers State, which has been locked in mortal political combat between the current governor, Sim Fubara, and the past governor, now Minister of Abuja, Nyesom Wike? Because many people believe that as a result of their feud, governance has ground to a halt in Rivers State. Do you agree or disagree?
But the governor himself confessed that he actually started real governance not more than 6 months ago, and so he should be assessed by what he has accomplished in 6 months. That's the governor's confession.
But do you think that feud is
definitely.
getting
There's
in the
no
way?
way it won't have impact. It's common sense. It will distract the governor. It will just distract key government officials. But I've noticed some progress lately, and I hope they're able to sustain the tempo.
Well, I'm wondering whether somebody like yourself, who is obviously a well-known, you're an author, you're a respected citizen of Nigeria, you're constantly banging on about, good governance and so on. I wonder what kind of impact you're making on your state, or what kind of intervention or suggestion or, advice that
I
you're
must
giving
confess
to.
lately, I've not shown keen interest in Rivers State lately for very many reasons.
Is that because you're politically connected in some ways
not quite.
with one side or the other?
Not quite. I'm totally not. I'm not aligned to any of the parties, whether the team led by the Honorable Minister of Federal Capital Territory or the team led by the governor.
But you must have an opinion on what's going on.
Definitely.
Right? What's your opinion? I mean, you're a member of the APC. What's your opinion of what's going on?
Well, for now, would you allow me to keep my opinion to myself? For now, trust me.
Okay, I'll respect that. If those are your wishes. But let's get back to the knob of the discussion. What do you reckon they do with all that money that you pointed out goes to them, the states? What do you reckon they do with all that?
Yeah, but you've noticed lately that the allocation that goes to the states have increased tremendously, I'm sure you are aware. On the 13% derivation, there's been an
Which
increase.
Rivers State gets a large chunk
There's
of.
been an increase of about 115%. Now, aside from derivation, then the general revenue is anticipated that it will increase by over 200% before the end of the year, following the removal of fuel subsidy and a few other things here and there. So, but incidentally, there's an inverse relationship. As revenue is increasing, services are going down. The quality of services are going down, quality of living is going down, then poverty is also in the increase. So it's something that we need to interrogate and find out what's going on. More revenue, less projects. It's not like salaries of workers have been increased or wages have been increased. That's something that requires a study. What's going on? More revenue is coming to the states. They are doing less projects, making less impact.
Do you think the citizens are also to blame for not demanding accountability?
Absolutely. It appears our citizens are docile. I think they've weaponized poverty. I absolutely subscribe that they've weaponized poverty.
So, I mean,
and there's something about literacy and holding government accountable. The more literate people you have, the higher the tendency to hold government
absolutely,
accountable.
I agree. So really,
maybe that's why they're not investing enough in education.
That would be, if you want to undermine something, then that would be a good strategy to have, wouldn't it? So really, your central argument, or at least one of your arguments, because you made some very good arguments in that article, is that the focus should be more on the state governors as they mark 1 year in office rather than the president. Is that a central argument?
No. The argument is, please, as we are holding the president or the central government accountable, can we still also hold the states accountable? That's the central argument. You know, and part of my argument is there's been focused attention on the central government, ignoring the role of the state government and the kind of revenue that accrues to state government. Please, can we hold our governors accountable to account for resources?
I think that's a very good
And
point.
they have not just the resources, they have constitutional responsibility to the people. What are they doing with that power? Are they discharging their responsibility in education, in healthcare, in provision of services, in security? Nobody can say there's been drastic improvement in the area of security in many states of the country. And all they do is to push the blame to the center. That's not very correct. Yes, the president has responsibility for security, but they also have responsibility for security in their various jurisdictions.
So after 1 year at both the federal and state levels, with majority of them, I mean, both the state and the federal government, run by your party, the APC, has democracy's image been redeemed or further damaged?
Further damaged.
In that 1 year?
Yes, you know, like I argued, and I've always argued, the people are beginning to lose faith in democracy. And leaders, political leaders, leaders in government, leaders in the opposition party must do something to redeem the image of democracy. Now, people are beginning to question whether democracy has capacity to deliver services, whether democracy has capacity to transform their lives for better. And that if we don't do something, then they will think that the other forms of government, you know, is obviously better than democracy. And it's been proven, you know, globally that democracy is a superior form of governance.
So what do you reckon should happen at this 1 year mark? It's a moment of reflection.
Now, it is a moment of reflection. Now, as we march to the second year, you know, I like to say this. As some governors swagger to the second year, and some stagger to the second year, please, can we find time to reflect? And if there is need to change course, you know, we should drop our ego and be bold enough to change course. And where we think that we're relatively on course, we should strengthen it. Our people are losing their patience. They can't be patient any longer. Poverty rate is high, hunger is high, all the negatives are high. Inflation is all-time high. I'm sure this is the highest we've had in the country. Inflation rate. Inflationary pressure is biting. And like they will say on the street, the rich also cry. And so you can't hold governors solely responsible. You know, in fact, the entire practice of government is responsible for high rate of inflation. But again, the governors can intervene in diverse ways.
Right.
You know, and one pattern I've observed is that most of them are even focusing on brick and mortar. You know, not very few are focusing on creating the ecosystem, you know, that provide opportunities, economic opportunities for citizens to be meaningfully engaged so they can earn some solid livelihood and live a good life. So if you provide roads, let's assume without considering, you provide roads and nobody can own a car and use the road. What have you done? You build hospitals, they don't have access to healthcare. Address primary healthcare. And I've seen a few states do that. Give them access to primary healthcare. You reduce the pressure on secondary healthcare. And you may not even need so much to invest in tertiary healthcare. Now, in terms of education, invest in primary education. Like, I don't like to use any specific state to give example, but I must acknowledge that you can see what Enugu is doing with the Smart School project, preparing pupils for the 21st century, not just for the 21st century, in fact, for the next generation. I've seen Akwa Ibom put up model schools. But not many states are investing in education.
Right.
I've seen, you know, some states, you know, in fact, or your state is making a lot of intervention in education. Kanu, I must confess, they've got good budgetary allocation, like I said earlier, in the area of in the education sector.
Okay.
But we want to see these things translated, not just from budgetary allocation, which actually is a statement of intent in reality. Let's see concrete results. Let's see more children who are in school, out of school children get enrolled.
Right.
Let's see that performance in public examinations have improved. Let's see the quality of, students who leave secondary school.
Okay. Listening to him, I mean, you can see why I enjoyed reading that article. I want to thank you very much indeed, Dr. Dakuku Peterside, for coming in, but also for putting out that very incisive article that you wrote for This Day newspaper. And he is, of course, author, columnist, and former member of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.